You stand at the docks of Seville, where ropes creak and gulls cry, and everything moves in a rhythm older than speech, a slow breath shared between men, wood, and water. The air tastes faintly of salt and oranges, a sweetness brushed with tar. Around you, sailors shuffle in silence, their boots pressing old stains into the planks, a map of every journey begun and never returned. The ships wait, their hulls broad and patient, painted with promises no one quite believes. You look at them as if at animals half asleep, tethered to the pier, dreaming of the deep. Each bears a name meant to sound divine: Trinidad, San Antonio, Concepcion, Victoria, Santiago, yet all seem more human than holy, wrapped in rope and rot, exhaling the musk of mildew and ambition. Somewhere inside their bellies, casks roll, nails groan, and a hammer rings in steady rhythm, the heartbeat of departure. You don't remember choosing this life, not clearly, only that someone spoke of glory, and you believed, because it was easier than refusal. You recall parchment, the scratch of a quill, a voice reading terms of pay, rations, the glory of Spain. You nodded. You heard your name recorded, echoing slightly in a small room. After that, everything drifted gently toward water. The harbor stirs, though no one seems truly awake. Men carry barrels across narrow planks, bending under their weight, eyes distant. A clerk in a faded coat counts aloud, his numbers drift on the breeze. Counting has become ritual, done only to remind everyone that order still pretends to exist. Behind him, crates open and shut again. Biscuits, salted meat, vinegar, dried beans, small tokens of civilization destined to sour in ocean air. You move among them, a shadow, following orders that have lost their shape. Sunlight glints off wet ropes, blinding and soft. You squint and feel a faint pull, not excitement, but surrender. Easier to drift than resist. A boy stacks wooden bowls, humming a tune with no melody, repeating until it melts into the air. Beyond the docks, church bells sound slow and indifferent, marking our blessing voyage, or merely reminding the city that time still passes. It hardly matters which. Someone calls your name quietly. You turn to find a man offering a folded paper, provisions listed in elegant script that has never known salt spray. You sign without reading, your fingers leaving a smudge. The ink gleams briefly, then dulls. He moves on. A wind lifts the tarps, stirring the river's scent, muddy, cold, full of secrets. You breathe it in, letting it settle deep. This is the scent of beginning, though it carries no hope. Men speak of distant islands and gold, of roots that will make them legends. You hear the words, but not the belief. The world they imagine feels flat, like a map spread on a table, oceans blue and tame. The true one waits past the river's mouth, vast, unmarked, heavy with silence. You pause by a crate stamped with the royal seal. Its lid is nailed shut, but you guess what lies within: weapons polished for ceremonies that won't occur. Flags destined to fade before, symbols that mean everything ashore and nothing at sea. Your hand brushes the woodworm from sun, rough with splinters. The journey ahead has no shape, only distance. A gull lands nearby, eyes pale and empty, pecks at nothing, then lifts off, wings slicing air. You watch it vanish into the glare. Most creatures, you think, know when to turn back. The quartermaster's voice weaves through the noise calm, measured, never raised. He repeats the same instructions: where to place barrels, how to coil rope, when to rest. He no longer hears his own words. He speaks because silence would admit doubt, and doubt is cargo this voyage cannot carry. Shadows stretch and shrink along the planks. The harbor thickens with the smell of sweat and oil, of bread left too long in the sun. You drink from a tin cup. The water tastes of iron. Someone laughs a tired, brittle sound. You don't know the joke, but let it linger, soft as breeze. Even laughter here feels rehearsed beyond the warehouses. The city hums narrow streets, tiled roofs, taverns where explorers are already myth. They speak of discovery as if it were clean, as if it didn't reek of boredom and brine. You doubt they imagine the noise, the monotony between miracles. Stories are always tidier than truth. You look again at the ships. Men climb the rigging like slow insects, adjusting sails that will soon carry you away. Canvas breathes in the wind a vast white lung. Beneath it all, the wood sighs, almost human. You imagine the ship remembering every voyage in its bones. Soon it will remember yours. A priest appears near the pier, robe fluttering, face flushed. He blesses the fleet in a tongue like distant thunder. Holy water arcs briefly, strikes the deck, vanishes. Men cross themselves from habit, fear, superstition. You mimic them, not from faith, but as quiet agreement with uncertainty. The tide shifts. Ropes tighten against their posts, groaning softly. A sailor mutters, "It will be soon." You nod. No one knows the exact hour, but it hardly matters. The leaving has already begun. It started when you signed your name, maybe before. Every motion since is only confirmation. As light drains from the sky, gold turns to gray, blue to slate. Noise fades until only water slaps the hulls. Lanterns glow along the pier, their reflections trembling like memories that won't hold still. The air cools, bringing a silence so deep it hums. You sit on a coil of rope near the edge, wood damp beneath you. Ripples gather around the posts, break softly. A bell rings in the distance. You count its echoes until they dissolve. You think of how many nights will sound like this, the sea's slow breath. Men pretending they comprehend it. A breeze carries citrus from the city. For a moment you recall home, a narrow room, a courtyard window, the sound of a broom at dawn. The memory feels small, decorative, like an object once owned but forgotten. You try to hold it. The wind takes it back. Down the dock, the same wordless tune rises again, falling with the water. You close your eyes and let it carry you. The harbor sways gently. The world tilts just enough to make you drowsy. You don't dream yet, but drift near its edge. The ships rest, masts leaning toward stars like tired prayers. You imagine the ocean beyond and deadless, patient, indifferent tanned. Realize it's already pulling you in. You breathe slow, listening to ropes shift in the dark. You think not of what comes next, only of this quiet harbor, holding its breath before the first step into forever. Below deck, the air belongs to no world outside. It hangs in layers, stale, sour, alive with old wood and damp hemp. Lantern light spills across beams, revealing a narrow space crowded with barrels sweating in the damp. You move through them as if inside the ship's lungs, careful not to disturb its breath. Your hands brush casks, salted pork, vinegar, dried beans, water, oiled, sealed, marked, recorded. The wood is rough, cold, slick, where brine seeps through. Ink blurs on the labels. Letters fade before the voyage begins. You stop at one, trace the word carne. Salt has bleached the wood pail, ghostly. Everything here, you think, is already becoming memory. A man with a ledger calls numbers, his voice muffled as if trapped in paper. You answer without thought, your voice thin against the hull's echo. The exchange repeats mechanical, ritualistic a way to impose sense on chaos. Counting becomes prayer. We are still here. We still exist. We still trust arithmetic to keep us alive. The smell deepens as lanterns dim. Somewhere, water drips, patient. Condensation, leak, or the ship settling into itself. You listen, counting the rhythm. It falls with clockwork precision, though no clocks exist here, only time, shapeless and moist, pooling in corners. You lift a barrel lid. Inside, biscuits hard as bone, stamped with the royal seal. You knock, one sound like knuckle on skull. A fly circles, vanishes into shadow. You seal it again. The air tastes of mildew and iron. Voices drift from above, orders movement, crates scraping planks. The ship swallows what it needs to survive. Men pass in single file, shoulders bent under flour sacks. They don't speak, but nod in rhythm, each face marked by the same dull knowing. Every pound loaded now will one day be lifted again. Emptier, lighter, gone. Near the bow, the floor slopes. Lanterns sway. Shadows move like living things. You sit on a crate labeled acetate de oliva. The oil inside sloshes, thick and golden. Its sound reminds you of the river's quiet persistence. You close your eyes, almost hear the harbor gulls, bells, city humbudd. Open them to close, dark, salt scent. Another barrel rolling into place. The quartermaster passes, steps steady, coat dusted with sawdust. He checks lists against Mark's eyes, scanning without expression. Pauses once, adjusts a figure, moves on. His face isn't cruel, only worn. A man like that could live forever, so long as there's something to count. A rat darts across the floor, fur glinting in lamplight before slipping into a crack near the waterline. You follow it with your eyes, no sound. After it vanishes, the ship has already claimed it. Some call rats omens, others companions, creatures that outlive human folly. You choose not to dwell. Sunlight slices through the hatch above, sharp white. Dust swirls in the beam like suspended sand. You breathe it in. It catches in your throat. The light transforms the hold into something unreal, a cathedral of cargo and shadow. For a moment, it's beautiful in its emptiness. When the hatch closes, the air thickens, as if the world withdrew. You return to the ledger, reading names that have lost meaning. Rice, peas, cheese, almonds, gunpowder. You imagine them rotting, softening, souring, unrecognizably. Here they sit, neatly written, numbered, promised control. A voice behind you chuckles low, not quite humor. A man sharpens a knife on wet stone, rhythmic, soothing. He doesn't look up. Funny thing, he says. We carry all this to stay alive, and it only reminds us how close we are to dying. You nod. Not conversation, just noise to fill the hollow. The knife whispers. You keep writing. The ship creaks, as if in agreement. Bells echo faintly above, muffled by wood and air, distant as memory of church. The day moves on without you. Light shifts, but here it makes no difference. Time behaves strangely. Below deck, slows, thickens, forgets itself. You could linger an hour or a lifetime and never tell. Climbing to the deck, light strikes like weight. The sky is too wide. You blink until shapes return. Masts like bare trees, men moving between them, water flat and endless. The air smells of wind and resin cleaner, but no kinder. You stand, adjusting, then turn to stores hoisted aboard. Barrels swing on thick ropes, groaning with mass. Men guide them, hands on lines, faces turned from the glare. Motion is slow, careful, inevitable. A misstep could crush a man, but no one seems afraid. Resignation lives in their muscles, the same acceptance you felt below. Now woven into rope and sinew, hammering rises, again nails driven, lids sealed, boards fastened. The rhythm is steady, almost musical. You think how often these sounds have echoed in harbors like this, for voyages lost to mist. The thought doesn't frighten, it only stretches the moment. A clerk calls another list. His voice blends with hammering pulleys, river murmur, everything merging into one unbroken note. You breathe it in. The ship's body grows around you, plank by plank, number by number. As light softens, loading slows. Men rest against barrels, sweat drying into pale streaks. Someone passes water, another wipes dust from his palms. You stare at the horizon, the blur where sky meets river. It hasn't changed. It may never. The quartermaster reads final tallies, voice flat, precise, almost tender. Comfort lives in completed lists. Men nod as if absolved. Ropes tighten. Sails shift. The ship exhales, a long sound from its bones. Night gathers. Lanterns glow, trembling against dark. You lean on the rail, watching light ripple on black water, gold on void. Below, among barrels and lists, everything needed for months lies silent, sealed. You think of it as promise, though it feels more like sentence. Air cools. A breeze rises wet, rope unburned oil. You close your eyes, match your breath to the ship's creak. The chains clatter, water brushing whole sounds like breathing. Slow, steady, endless, until you can't tell yours from the seas. Men drift toward, sleep curled in corners, leaning on barrels they lifted all day. Their murmurs fade, leaving only ship and water. You stay at the rail, hands resting, eyes half open. Somewhere in dark, the quartermaster closes his book. The sound is final, like a key turning. You imagine the hold, rows of supplies in quiet order. Each holds a measure of survival, a portion of time. Together, they weigh more than the ship. You wonder how long the world will feel this heavy, how long before counting stops mattering. Wind shifts, ropes whisper against mast. You breathe against salt, ink, something metallic, the residue of what's coming. You don't move. The ship rocks, gently cradling provisions. Men, every name written down to avoid being forgotten. And far beyond the harbor's edge, the sea waits vast, patient, indifferent has, if already measuring you to. Light returns without fanfare. The river lies still under thin fog. Bells reach you before sight does slow. patient, folding into water's rhythm. You rise because others do. No one speaks. It feels less like waking, more like summons. Decks lick with dew. Ropes glisten, coiled like sleeping serpents. Above, sails unfurl, with soft, ciphered breath of wind filling them. The sound is immense, yet gentle. One exhale stretched across sky. You watch canvas swell, white and endless. Feel the ship tremble not from fear, but from remembering its purpose. Men move in quiet coordination. Boots thud on wet planks. Pulleys creak. Commands murmur like prayer. The harbor, once loud, now hushed has, if the city holds its breath. Only the tide shifts, urging outward. You glance ashore. Seville remains pale rooftops, stacked like old bones. Cathedral spire piercing mist. From here, it already looks like memory. People line the docks, small, silent, faces blurred by distance. Some wave, others only watch. Gulls circle, cries sharp and brief. A priest raises his hand in blessing, voice lost to wind. Smoke curls from a censer, swallowed by morning. You smell only tar, wet rope, river stirred from sleep. Holy words, you imagine, dissolve in water before reaching you. Orders sound. Mooring lines loosen thick ropes, sliding across pier with low-grown. One by one, they drop into river-heavy final. The ship shifts, its weight on animal testing limbs. You feel it beneath your feet, the world tilting toward motion. Current catches. Prow turns from dock. Space between ship and land widens. Men at rail watch in silence as distance grows meters. Then more. The city seems to recede, not the ship moving forward. Leaving, you realize, isn't movement its ratio. Bells ring slower, fading into themselves. Sails tighten. Wind gathers. The captain's voice cuts through stillness, steady, formal, stripped of feeling, calling to adjust rigging. Simple words, practiced yet enormous in the quiet. They mark beginning, though it feels nothing like one. River widens. Water glints like dull metal under weak sun. Warehouses give way to fields, then empty earth hisen a smudge. You stand at railing, watching colored drain. City ochres replaced by gray-green monotony of open water. Someone hums near business, tuneless just enough to fray the silence. Sound blends with woods creak, waters slap a music that doesn't ask to be heard, only exists, like breathing. You match your heartbeat to it, slow even. River air carries silt and decay vegetation, half live. It clings to clothes, mixes with sweat, becomes part of you. You wipe palms on trousers, but dampness lingers. Every surface is moistrope, wood, skin is. If ship already merges with sea, a sailor passes coil of line over shoulder. Face blank, focused, eyes fixed, beyond rigging. He seems to have lived this moment before in dream or repetition. You wonder how many times he's left, or if he's ever returned. His footsteps fade into ship's noise, settling into rhythm. The day unfolds without hurry. Sun climbs behind haze, pale and indifferent. You eat from a wooden bowl-hard bread, sliver of cheese, water tasting of barrel. Food sticks in throat, but you chew until gone because that's what's required. The act of swallowing becomes another kind of duty. Another way to say, I am still here. Eating feels less like nourishment, and more like an agreement to continue. The men speak little. There is nothing to say that hasn't already been spoken, nothing to predict that holds weight. They move as though drawn by unseen threads, gesture precise, unhurried, worn smooth by repetition. You find solace in their sameness, the same motions, the same sounds echoing without end. Order is the only thing that feels solid. The city has vanished. Only the river remains winding, endless, leading toward a line the eye cannot reach. The ship rocks gently, its sway slow and deliberate. The rhythm pulls you in a long inhale, a long exhale. You lean against the rail, watching ripples stretch away like threads, unraveling into nothing. The water deepens in tone. Shadows drift across the deck, soft and thin, softening every edge until shapes blur. The crew grows quiet. Someone else clears their throat. Beyond that, unbroken, you glance back once more. The land is a faint smudge now, an outline dissolving into mist. The realization comes without warning. You are gone, not with fanfare, not with grief, just gone. Like a footprint erased by water. The thought should feel vast. It does not. It feels small, almost administrative-like, signing your name on a page you no longer recall. The captain stands near the helm, his form rigid against the fading light. His stance does not shift as the sky darkens. He looks neither ahead nor behind. Those both directions hold the same emptiness. Officers move around him with quiet certainty. Men who know the steps of command but not its heart. The ritual of leadership continues. Even when belief has thinned to habit, the river narrows, then opens. You feel it in your bones, the ship settling deeper, the water growing heavier beneath the hull. The sound shifts to lower, slower, as if the world itself has drawn a deeper breath. Men turn their faces toward the horizon, though nothing waits there. Only the widening gray. Light fades without color. Sails darken against the sky, their edges faintly glowing in the last gleam. The wind turns, carrying the scent of salt, sharp, ancient, inevitable. You taste it on your lips, the promise of boundlessness. The ship tilts slightly, catching open air. The river's edges dissolve. The land retreats, one final time, polite, indifferent. Lanterns flicker to life along the deck. Their glow trembles in the wind, casting trembling rings upon the water ghosts left in the ship's wake. The harbor's noise has vanished. Only the sea remains, its murmur low and steady, like thought slowing into stillness. A voice rises near the mast, command or prayer. You cannot tell. The words rise, catch in the sails, scatter into air. You tilt your head back. Stars appear. Uncertain, they seem to drift with the ship, as if trailing rather than guiding. You remain at the rail long after others have disappeared below. Cold gathers in your hands, but you do not move. The sea glows faintly under moonlight, smooth, unreadable. You cannot tell where water ends and night begins. They share the same texture, the same depth of calm. Somewhere beneath that surface lies the world. Ledgers, barrels, stacked in careful rows. You close your eyes and listen. The sea whispers against the hull. Sails murmur overhead. The wood beneath your feet moves in a tired rhythm that could stretch forever. You breathe with it slow, quiet. quiet until the boundary between you and the ship dissolves. When you open your eyes again, the horizon is pure darkness. The city is gone. The river is gone. Only the pulse remains: water, wind, and the faint, stubborn sense that nothing has truly changed. Light returns without fanfare. It filters through mist, clinging to the deck, not brightening the sea, only softening its dark. You wake to the same sound that lulled you to sleep: timbers groaning, waves licking the hull. It is no longer noise, it is the rhythm of your being. Men move in silence. Words have given way to motion ropes pulled taut, decks scrubbed clean, buckets carried from bow to stern. Each task flows into the next, links in a chain with no beginning or end. The air smells of brine, sweat, old wood, a scent that clings to your skin no matter how fiercely you wash. Time is measured differently now. There are no hours, only duties. Light is when the sun hides behind SAILCLOTH. Heat is when the deck burns through your souls. Wind shift is when lanterns sway. Dark is when sea and sky become one, and between them, only rhythm continuing. Whether you move or not, the ship breathes. That is how it feels now, live, immense, woven from hidden lungs and bones that sigh with every tilt. You've learned its language: the creak meaning strain on the mast, the thud signaling a loose barrel below, the hiss of wet rope through pulleys. Even silence has wet a warning before wind turns or swell rises. At first, you tried to mark the days, as some still do, carving faint lines into wood with nail tips. But the sea laughs at counting. It folds one day into the next, blurring edges until all feel the same. You no longer dream when you sleep. You no longer recall a world that smelled of anything but salt. The sun is an idea, now felt as heat, seen as bleaching glare, never looked at directly. Sometimes you close your eyes and summon the memory of grass, the shadow of a wall, candlelight through glass dot, but the images dissolve, belonging to someone else's past. Voices have changed, softer, deeper, nearly monotone. Laughter still surfaces, but it sounds like habit, not joy. When men speak, it's of small things: a frayed rope, a leaking barrel, a fish that trailed the hull for days before vanishing. No one speaks of home. The word has grown too vast, too distant to fit between breaths. Food never changes: biscuit, dried meat, water tasting of old wood. You eat slowly, not but because haste feels like defiance. The ship demands rhythm. Even in hunger, you chew with the creak of beams, swallow with the crash of waves. There are no mirrors aboard. You've ceased wondering what you look like. Sometimes, in a puddle of rainwater, you glimpse a face size dulled by salt, skin cracked by wind, and feel not shock but faint curiosity, as if meeting a stranger from a half-remembered tale. When lanterns dim, the sea becomes infinite. You lie on the deck, hard beneath you, watching stars tremble in the dark. They never stay still, they drift with the waves, tethered to the same unseen current. Sometimes you wonder if the ship moves at all, or if the world turns beneath you, endless, circular. Repeating routine deepens tasks once burdensome, now feel sacred. You scrub the same plank each cyclage, stroke a quiet prayer. You tie knots not because ordered, but because the act gives shape to the formless. you come to crave, the whistle signaling shift change not for rest, but for proof the pattern holds. Younger sailors still scan the horizons, searching for land, for sign, for shift. You no longer look, the horizon is a lie always present, always unreachable, promising what it cannot give. You understand now, the sea does not lead anywhere, it simply continues. Sometimes a bird appears, a dark shape, skimming the waves. It circles once, twice, then vanishes into gray. Men point, whisper, as if it carries meaning. You watch in silence, knowing it does not. Out here, even omens become routine. The ship's scent has changed. Once wood and salt, now layered with sweat, damp cloth, unwashed skin, oil. These odors blend into something, neither foul nor familiar smell, belonging only to this floating world. You breathe it without thought, becomes the odor of existence itself. Grow quieter the longer you drift, not because the sea calms, but because you've stopped hearing its voice. Waves crash, water slaps, beams groan until all merge into one hum, then into silence. You learn that silence is not absence, it is unity. Every sound becomes the same. You forget the feel of stillness, even when the ship rests. Your body sways tethered to the water's hidden rhythm in your mind. You try to stand on solid ground, but the motion follows you, replacing your heartbeat with the sea's slow rock. Some nights you wake, suddenly heart pounding, eyes scanning the dark. Everything appears unchanged. Lanterns glow, sleeping shapes, sea's endless hum. Yet something feels escuous. If the world shifted by a breath, you wait, listening until the unease fades. It always does. The sea offers discomfort, but no answers. You've stopped asking questions. Thought has no room to grow. Here it is worn smooth by repetition. Each cycle strips away another layer, fear, hope, curiosity. Until only habit remains, not emptiness, peace. They do not break the rhythm, they reshape it. The ship groans louder. Men move faster. Voices flare and vanish in wind. You cling to rain-slick ropes, blinded by spray, muscles burning. Yet, beneath the chaos, there is recognition. Same pattern, only louder. Even disorder obeys rules. Here, afterward, the world resets. Deck glistens, sky clears. The same pale light returns as if nothing happened. The sea remembers nothing. It forgets faster than men. One day you wake and realize you no longer count the cycles. The thought brings no fear, only inevitability. Almost comfort. Time, like land, was never meant to survive out here. You spend long stretches at the bow, staring into void. Wind moves through your hair. Spray touches your lips. You feel the ship's pulse beneath your feet. Everything is bound wood, water, flesh by ceaseless motion. You no longer ask where it leads. Movement itself has become the answer. The others are the same extensions of the ship, their thoughts shaped by its sway. When someone speaks, words vanish too quickly to matter. Even names fade. You call each other by function, rigor, cook, watchman. Identity traded for role. The stars shift slightly each night, just enough to hint the world turns, though it never feels that way. You learn their paths without trying. You know which marks the deepest dark, which fades first into light. They become companions, silent, dependable. Eventually, you stop noticing when one cycle ends and the next begins. You move from motion to motion, and time flows through you like water through a net, leaving nothing behind. The sea teaches you. Survival is not progress, it is endurance, existing quietly within. Repetition until even your thoughts drift with the tide. When you lie down, you no longer wonder how far you've come. You listen instead to the sea beneath you, to the breathing of men folded into the same unbroken rhythm. You close your eyes. The sound wraps around you steady. Hold on as you drift toward sleep. You grasp the strangest truth. You've stopped waiting for land. You've stopped waiting for anything. The sea has become the world, and the world, for now, is enough. You begin to notice the quiet more than anything. Not the quiet of calm, but the quiet of surrender. The kind that settles over men who know the edges of their world. Waves still break, ropes still groan, but beneath it all, a hush, tense, thin, humming in the air like the echo after a bell falls silent. You see him sometimes, the captain at the stern, one hand on the rail, eyes fixed on the unchanging horizon. His posture never shifts, not when wind bites, not when the deck tilts. He seems anchored not to the ship, but to the idea of it. He appears older than his years, though perhaps that's just the light out here. Even youth fades into the same salt-worn exhaustion. He does not shout. He does not need to dot orders come softly, passed through lieutenants, turned into motion. Men move because motion is easier than thinking. There is comfort in that, letting purpose be given, not sought. Each command feels inevitable, like gravity. When his voice reaches you, it carries a strange weight, not warmth, not cruel to only certainty, the kind of certainty the world rarely offers. He speaks as though he has already traced the edge of every map, as if the ocean whispered its full shape into his ear long ago. You almost believe him, because belief in fate is easier than trust in chance. They say he locks his charts away, even from the officers. He studies them alone, by lantern glow that bleeds through the cabin window. Secret too heavy to name. You pass once and hear nothing. No pen scratch, no footfall, no breath, only the soft crackle of flame. You wonder if he ever rests. The men speak of him in hushed tones, not gossip, but something closer to reverence. They say he prays to a god who speaks only through lines on parchment. They say he carries a relic from distant shores, though none have seen it. Say he feels no fear of the world's edge, because he has already walked it in his mind. You do not ask if these things are true. Belief has become a kind of currency out here. You spend it sparingly. Sometimes he walks the deck alone. Long after the lanterns are lit, you hear the slow, even rhythm of his boots, unhurried. Even the sea seems to still itself as he passes. Lantern light stretches his shadow across the planks, long fractured by the ship's motion, reaching toward the bow as if trying to grasp what lies ahead. You know that shadow better than his face. There is something mechanical in his movement, each gesture precise, each turn deliberate. It unsettles you. The kind of control that belongs to things that can break but refuse to. He never flinches at shifting winds. He never hesitates when questioned. He never raises his voice. He does not need to. Obedience has become instinct, like breathing. The Officers watch him closely. You feel it in the air, loyalty edged with something colder, not distrust, not yet, something quieter, the awareness that the ship's fate rests with a man who believes the sea can be reasoned with when he speaks of the voyage. His words sound like scripture. We are instruments of discovery, he says. History bends for those who move first. The crew repeats these lines softly, as if spoken too loudly. They might crumble. You wonder what kind of mind sees a path in endless water, calls the horizon unfinished. There is courage in that Tor madness out here. The difference has no meaning. In rare moments when he passes near, you catch his scent, parchment, salt, and something faintly metallic, ink left too long in sun. His eyes are steady, too steady, gazing not at you, but through you, as if you are made of air. You nod when he speaks, though you never recall his words. They are not meant for you, they are meant for the wind, the waves, the unseen force that listens to men who insist on circling the earth. Once a man is punished for defiance. It happens without spectacle. The captain does not raise his hand. His face shows no anger. An order is given. Lashes fall. Silence holds. You watch from a distance. The whip's sound is muffled by wind. The man's cry is small, ashamed, swallowed instantly by the seas. Endless rhythm. When it ends, the captain walks away as though the act had already been accounted for in routine. There is no cruelty in it, only procedure. That is what frightens you most. He remains unchanged. The ship yields to his will, as if it recognizes in him a firmness that mirrors its own wooden soul. When the wind stills, he waits. When it returns, he listens like a priest hearing confession. His calm becomes your shelter. You trust it even as you fear it. Rumor says he keeps a small journal. No one has seen its pages, but the idea alone makes it sacred. Claim, he writes, not words, but coordinates. Others say he records confessions, promises to the dead, or maps that shift with the tides. You imagine him bent over a table, writing in a language no living soul remembers. A man translating the sea's will into something human. The voyage has altered him, though the change is hard to name. His beard grows thicker, his face grows leaner, his eyes burn brighter in dim light. He speaks less, yet when he does, men lean closer. The silence after his words always feels intentionally, if meaning lingers there, waiting for those who can bear its weight. You wonder what drives him. Not gold, not glory. Those belong to kings and merchants. His hunger is older, quieter. You sense it in how he studies the sky, not with wonder, but calculation, as if every star is a nail, every constellation a scaffold to be built. Not admired, he does not seek beauty, he seeks completion. The longer you sail, the less he seems human, not divine, only stripped of everything unnecessary, a function more than a man. You imagine him standing unmoved in a storm, the sea shattering itself against him. Part of you envies that stillness, part of you dreads what must be surrendered to earn it. You dream of him, sometimes never clearly, only in flashes, his silhouette against the night sky, his hands tracing lines over a map, his eyes reflecting the same gray as the sea dot in the dream. He does not speak, he does not need to. His silence becomes the dream itself, unbroken, without beginning or end. When you wake, the feeling remains. The ship breathes its slow rhythm. Men move through their tasks. Somewhere above or below, the captain moves unseen, shaping the air around him without effort. You find yourself working faster when he is near. Though he never watches you, the very idea of his gaze carries weight. He is not cruel, that would require feeling. He is not kind, that would require indulgence. He simply is like the mast, like the tide. The men call him El Capitán, but it is no longer a name. It is a title that bends the air around it. When spoken, conversation halts for a breath, not from fear, but recognition, like pausing at a church threshold before stepping inside. At the dimming of the light, the ship glows faint gold. You see him there again, hands resting on the rail, face unreadable. The sky behind him deepens from blue to black. The air smells of salt and distant smoke. He does not move as the last light fades. He stands as if waiting for the world to fold itself neatly into darkness. You watch longer than you intend, caught between curiosity and weariness. The sea murmurs against the hull. Ropes sway, lanterns flicker. Everything settles into its nightly order. You close your eyes, listening to the water's rhythm. When you open them, he is gone. Only the faint trace of his shadow remains, long, thin, nearly indistinguishable from the deck's grain. You lie down, feeling the ship breathe beneath you. The air tastes of iron. Somewhere above, the captain is awake, charting a course no one else will ever see. You know he is there not because you hear him, but because the silence feels arranged, deliberate. The sea rolls beneath the stars. You drift with it, a small shape in a vast design, moving under the unseen hand of a man who seems carved from the same substance as fate itself. As sleep begins to pull at you, you feel not in words, but in sensation that this might be what faith truly is. Not understanding, not hope, but surrender to the quiet certainty of another's will. Darkness no longer falls, it seeps in gradual, seamless, less like absence and more like the ship sinking gently into shadow. Lanterns burn earlier now, though the gloom arrives heavier, slower, as if reluctant to touch you. The sea stretches flat, and infinita, black mirror, holding up a sky of unfamiliar stars. You do not recall when the old constellations vanished. They simply faded, names forgotten in their place. Strange patterns, crooked crosses, pale clusters, faint as dust. The men stare upward with quiet unease. They whisper that these stars do not guide, they watch. You look too long, and your mind begins to tilt as if the sky itself were turning. The air here is different. The wind carries no scent of land or storm. It moves like shallow breath passing across your skin. Without weight, the waves murmur softly against the hull. But even their rhythm has shifted, lower, more deliberate, like a creature pacing in its sleep. The ocean feels deeper now, as if the world beneath the surface has widened beyond the one above. You feel it in your bones, a quiet shift in how sound travels, how light fades, how silence settles between words. The ship no longer groans the same, its heartbeat has changed tempo. Lungs fill with foreign air, the ropes hum differently in the wind. Notice these things without trying the way you notice your own breathing. Melon still walks the deck in the dim, his shape outlined against lantern glow. Sometimes he stands beside the helmsman, tracing invisible lines between the stars. You watch from the shadows. See how his eyes catch that pale southern light, sharp, distant. He seems to rest less now. None of you do not truly. The stars pulse faintly, thin light. They hang lower than before, almost within reach. Half awake, you stretch your hand toward the man for a moment. It feels as if they might fall into your palm, tiny, weightless stones, too fragile to hold. You lower your hand, feel the ship's motion beneath you, endless, carrying you farther from all you once knew. The dark has grown longer, or perhaps the light has learned to hide. The horizon no longer brightens with promise, it merely softens gray, bleeding into gray. The sun, when it appears, feels wrongs, smaller, weaker, as if its light must travel farther to find you. Cold has begun to settle into everything, not sharp, but steadier, slow claiming. The deck holds the chill long after warmth should return. Barrels sweat with it. Your breath fogs when you speak. The sea carries a pale shimmer when you touch the water. It feels denser than it should, as if brushed by something ancient. Unmoved at night, the captain studies the sky in silence, marking positions on parchment that no longer make sense to you. The lines grow uncertain, the ink runs thin. You watch him fold each chart with courage, if hiding a truth too fragile for daylight. The men no longer ask questions, they follow. The sea continues. You lie on the deck. When duties end, stars blur above, trembling with the ship's sway. You cannot name them yet. They seem to know you. Their cold glow settles on your face like the faint brush of snow. The light feels indifferent, colder than prayer. Unmoved by human longing or suffering, voices among the crew have grown thinner. Laughter has faded into murmur. Conversations trail off mid-sentence. You hear fragments, half-dreamed fears, snatches of old songs. No one finishes. The words no longer matter. The sea absorbs them before they leave the lips. Sometimes, when the wind dies and sails hang limp, you almost hear the ocean breathing slow, enormous, deliberate. The sound rises from beneath the hula deep, resonance vibrating through the wood. It feels alive, patient, waiting. You do not know for what. Starlight breaks on the water, shattering into ripples that fade to soon. It is easy to lose focus staring at them. You begin to imagine you are looking down into the sky, that the ship sails between two heavens, mirrored and endless. You are caught between them, suspended in quiet eternity. The cold deepens, settling into your hands, your jaw, the space between breaths. When you move, it feels like dragging something invisible. Men huddle together, not for warmth, but to prove they still exist. The sea offers no reflection, now only darkness, thick and opaque. The cook speaks of strange lights on the horizon, green, flickering like lanterns. Beneath the waves, you go to look, see starlight distorted by mist. Yet the idea lingers. You begin to glimpse faint glimmers at the edge of vision. Gone when you turn your head. Melon's shadow grows longer with each passing watch. He stands at the bow, sometimes motionless for hours, his silhouette merging with the mast, black against starlight. You begin to think he draws strength from the dark feeding on the cold itself. Men glance at him, then look away quickly, afraid of what they might see if they stare too long. The ocean takes on new hues, not the blue you once knew, but layers of gray and silver, shades of iron and smoke. Waves move slower, as if dragging against something unseen. Even the foam feels different, thicker, clinging to the hull-like hands, unwilling to let go. Each cycle of light bleeds into the next. Sun rises, dissolve into mist, darkness returns without fanfare. The stars are your only companions, yet their patterns shift almost imperceptibly. Night after night, it feels as if the sky moves on while you remain. Sleep no longer comes gently. It arrives like fog, heavy, directionless. You dream of water without end, faces blurred by starlight, voices calling from depths too far to reach in the dream. You always look up, but the stars keep changing places. When you wake, you are not sure you have truly left the dream. One evening, beneath a pale crescent moon, you notice the air hums a low, steady tenor threading through the silence. It comes from nowhere, and everywhere the men hear it, to no one speaks. You all stand still, listening. It fades only when the first star falls, a tiny flare, vanishing before it touches the horizon. Begin to wonder how long you have sailed beneath this new sky. The cycles are too alike to count. The sea no longer feels like a path you travel. It feels like a world you inhabit, tentless, self-contained, a moving prison, or perhaps a cradle. It is hard to tell the difference. Now the stars watch in silence. Their light offers no comfort. It judges nothing, blesses nothing. It simply is calm, eternal, unreachable. You imagine them as the eyes of ancient gods, watching your small ship crawl across the black surface of their forgotten sea. One night, the captain orders all lanterns extinguished. The ship sinks into pure darkness. You cannot see the man beside you. You cannot see your own hands. Only the stars remain, thousands of them, shimmering faintly, their reflections trembling in the water. The ship becomes invisibly, adrift in the void. For the first time, you feel the full weight of your insignificance. It is not frightening. It is almost a relief. The constellations move above you, slow, deliberate. You realize they do not need to guide you. They have watched this path long before any man dared to name it. The ship sighs softly, surrendering to their rhythm. The sea exhales. The world drifts deeper into stillness. You close your eyes, breathe in air cold, metallic, endless. Stars press against your eyelids, leaving ghost lights behind. You cannot tell if you are awake or dreaming, perhaps. It no longer matters. The voyage has no borders, no end, no return, only motion, only the sound of water, only the quiet turning of the sky. And somewhere above or below, the stars shift again, tracing paths over a world that has forgotten its own name. Sea has grown quieter. It moves without sound, now a vast sheet of colorless glass hiding depths too well. The air feels thinner. If the world itself were slowly running out of breath, you move slower, not from caution, but from the heaviness that has settled into your bones. The wind brings nothing, now only itself. The biscuits have turned to powder when you bite them. They dissolve on your tongue like dust from the earth you left behind. The salted meat gleams with rata gray sheen. Slick and sour, you eat it anyway. Hunger no longer feels like pain. It is quieter, now a steady presence, humming. Just below thought, you chew because the body demands it. You swallow because this is what survival looks like even when it no longer feels like living. The water has gone stale, tasting of rust and patience, as if it, too, has waited too long to be used. You sip carefully, pretending it still quenches. Some add vinegar to mask the taste. It only makes it sharper, harsher. You drink because there is nothing else. Thirst does not negotiate. The cook no longer hums. His fire burns, smaller, cautious, reluctant, as if afraid of being noticed. Below deck, the air smells of damp wood, brine, and a faint decay that clings to every surface. It seeps into ropes, into clothes, into sleep. Light grows weaker with each appearance, spilling over the sea like something exhausted, unable to reach the surface fully. Shadows soften, blur. You have stopped trying to tell moments apart. The bell rings, you move, you do not think. Routine has become mercy. When food is passed, you take your share carefully, not from politeness, but because everyone has learned to measure greed. The crew eats in silence. The sound of chewing fills the air, slow, grim rhythm older than speech. Occasionally, someone mutters a joke about boiling leather. No one laughs, but a few glance at their boots. Your stomach has shrunk, tightening each day like a hand closing around itself. Hunger moves differently, now less urgent, more patient, spreading quietly through your chest into your thoughts. It becomes a rhythm you cannot ignore, a pulse beneath every motion. When you sleep, you dream of color, bread warm from the oven, meat rich and red, fruit dripping sweetness down your wrists. You wake to gray water, gray sky, gray faces. Voices have grown thinner, stretched, as if each word costs something. Laughter has become a ghost heard sometimes, faint and brittle, the echo of what it once was. Jokes circle the same dark corners. Food, madness, God. No one speaks of home. The word has lost its meaning, drifted away somewhere between hunger and horizon. You notice your hands tremble when tying ropes, not from cold, from weakness. Muscles move slower, now reluctant. You hide it. Everyone does too. Show how empty you've become. Feels dangerous, like revealing a wound that invites the knife at night. The ship breathes with you. Its creaks have softened, its voice grown frail. You lie awake, listening to wood settling under the weight of the voyage. Two stars blurring into one another, faint and cold. You cannot tell if it's fog in your icer, the sky itself fading. Sometimes a man collapses quietly, a small, hollow thud against the deck. Others carry him below. Without a word, you do not ask if he will rise again. You know better than to expect answers from a world this empty. You think of time differently. Now it does not move forward. It sinks like an anchor into dark water. You feel it gathering weight, dragging the ship deeper into something unseen. The ocean stretches endlessly in every direction, the same dull skin of moving glass. It feels like being trapped inside. Heartbethought has forgotten how to stop. The smell of spoiled meat follows you everywhere, hides in your clothes. clings to your hair. You grow used to it, till a rare breeze carries clean air, and the contrast makes you dizzy. You breathe deeper than you mean to, almost desperate. Then it is gone again, swallowed by the same invisible rot that defines your days. There is a strange comfort in repetition, the same movements, the same labor, the same hollow meals. You begin to understand how people become ghosts while still alive, not through death, but through sameness. The world grows smaller, your body quieter. You move, you eat, you sleep, but the self begins to thin like light. Stretched too far, you catch yourself talking to the sigh voice, barely a whisper, not words, just sound, to hear something human. The water does not answer, it never does, but it listens, always. You can feel it listening, patient and vast. The captain still appears on deck, expression unreadable. He is thinner, too, though his eyes have not lost their edge when he speaks. It feels like hearing a voice from another world, one that still remembers what purpose sounds like. The crew obeys without question, not from faith, but from the exhaustion of choice. One morning, you find a dead rat beside a barrel. Men gather silently, not in disgust, but in longing. Someone mutters a prayer. Someone else glances at the cook. The cook looks away. No one touches the rat, not yet. But you all think the same thing. A body is a body, and hunger is an old god thought, does not care for names. You feel shame for thinking it, but the shame does not stay. Hunger dissolves everything. Fear, pride, decency, it strips you clean until all that remains is need. You begin to understand how easily men become something else when the body forgets comfort. The sea does not punish, it simply reveals. When the biscuits finally vanish, the cook scrapes the barrel for crumbs. You line up without hope, hands outstretched, like beggars at a temple. He shakes his head before you reach him. The barrel is empty. The sound it makes when he taps it final echoes through the ship like a bell for the dead. That night, no one sleeps. The sea is still. The air hangs heavy, tasting of metal and silence. Someone begins to pray softly, words tumbling over one another, desperate and shapeless. Others join. Their voices weave into a low humless like faith, more like mourning. You close your eyes and imagine land, any land, grass underfoot, trees heavy with fruit, air that does not taste of salt. You can almost feel it, the solidness of it. But when you open your eyes, there is only the sea, endless and blank. The illusion slips away like water through fingers. Cycles blur until the idea of cycle itself fades. The sun is just a pale smudge in the sky. You have stopped counting meals, stopped marking passage. You exist in slow motion, breath by breath, bite by bite, heartbeat by heartbeat. The cook begins boiling strips of canvas in salt water. No one jokes this time. The smell fills the deck, bitter and sour. You chew the leather carefully, each bite a battle. It does not taste like food, but it gives your jaw something to do. The body confuses motion for sustenance. One man laughs while eating it dry, cracked sound closer to sobbing. You almost envy him. At least the sound reminds him he is still alive. Most of you have forgotten what that feels like. Hunger has changed you. It is no longer an intruder. It is a companion, quiet, persistent, faithful. It no longer asks, it simply stays. You move through tasks in a fog the world, narrowing to the space between one swallow and the next. The ship carries you onward, though onward has no meaning now. The sea remains the same dot, the sky unchanging. Only your bodies shrink faces. Hollow dot eyes, depending ginto, something that reflects more than it reveals, and through it all, the ocean keeps whispering, that slow, rhythmic murmur, filling the gaps between thoughts. You begin to think it is not mocking you, it is waiting for what you do not know. You fall asleep with salt on your lips and wake to the same taste. Nothing changes, the stars remain. The ship moves through nothingness. Hunger continues slow, patient as eternal as the sea dot. And in that stillness, you begin to understand what it means to endure, not to conquer, not to survive, but simply to keep breathing while the world around you forgets how. The sea changes before you notice its color, depending ginto, something more solid, as if the water itself has grown tired of being fluid. The air thickens, too scented with earth, and draught rises faint at first, then deeper, filling your lungs like memory. You stand at the rail, squinting through mist, and there it is, land. It offers no announcement. No sharp line divides ocean from earth, only the slow emergence of form. Trees rise from fog, dark and unmoving, their reflections trembling on the water's surface. The men gather beside you, faces gaunt, unreadable. The sight should stir joy. It does not. You all stare, as if the world has grown an extra limb, unsure whether to marvel or fear. The forest waits in silence. It looks untouched, unmoved, unwilling to welcome. Leaves shimmer under a pale sun. The shore gleams with thick mud, dark as oil. The sea meets it with a sound soft and reluctant, like to things forced together that never wished to touch. Someone murmurs, "It looks like the edge of the world." Another answers, "Maybe it is." No one laughs. The wind carries the scent of green and decay, a sharp, wet aliveness after the ship's stale air. You breathe it in. It burns slightly, reminding your lungs they still remember how to want more than salt. Magellan stands at the bow. He does not move, does not speak. His gaze locks on the shore, as if reading words written there that no one else can see. The men whisper of what might lie beyond the tree-line gold. Giants, new gods, or worse, nothing at all. You say nothing. You watch the fog breathe across the water, folding over itself like a living thing. The ship slows, sails hang loose. Exhausted, the creak of rigging echoes strangely against the trees. Birds call distant, unfamiliar. Their cries seem to come not from throats, but from the air itself, beautiful in their indifference. A boat is lowered. Oars dip in silence, each stroke careful, as if afraid of waking something. You watch the men move toward shore, their bodies small against vast stillness. At the mud's edge, they pause. No one steps forward for a long stretch of stillness. They stand, shapes in mist, part of the landscape. Then one takes a step. The others follow from the deck. You see them vanish into the green. Their forms disappear quickly. The sound of their movement fades, replaced by insect hum and the sigh of leaves rubbing together. You keep watching, waiting. The tide shifts in small, reluctant gestures when the boat returns. It carries nothing new only. The men, eyes distant, hands empty, they speak quietly to the captain. He nods once, face unchanged. The words pass among the crew soft, confused, carried more by curiosity than urgency. There were people, they say, tall, painted, quiet. They did not speak, did not flee, only watched from the trees. And when a sailor lifted a hand in greeting, they turned and melted into the green sound. Less darkness deepens, trunks black as pitch, fires are lit on decks small controlled, warmth faint against damp air. Men speak in low voices, faces orange in the flame. Talk drifts from wonder to superstition. One claims the forest moves at night, that he saw shadows where none stood. Another says he heard laughter faint. But human, no one argues. You tilt your head back. The stars are wrong here, too many, too sharp, arranged in patterns that feel alien. The sky itself seems stretched thin over this unmarked place. You trace constellations you once knew, but they no longer fit. Heavens have redrawn themselves. You no longer belong to them. When you close your eyes, the forest's sound stays with you, its own rhythm, a heartbeat through roots and leaves. You dream of walking beneath those trees, ground soft, air wet against your skin. You dream of eyes watching from the dark, not cruel, only knowing when you wake. You feel you've forgotten something, vital something the forest tried to tell you, and you failed to understand. Fog lies thick across the water, a pale curtain blurring all edges. The ship feels smaller in a taut drift in whiteness. You hear the forest, but cannot see. Its branches creak faintly somewhere. A bird cries once, then silence. The men move slower, eyes flicking toward shore. The quiet feels heavier than hunger ever did. Magellan orders another landing. This time, you are among those who go. The air grows dense as you near land, scented with sap and mud. Oars make soft, wet sounds that blend with your breath. When your boots touch ground, it yields slightly, sinking under your weight. Reluctant to let go, the forest looms ahead, dense, alive. You step into it, and the world changes. Air no longer moves. Light filters through leaves in green fragments. Every sound magnifies the crack of a branch, the scrape of cloth, the pulse in your ears. Insects hum in constant rhythm. You walk carefully, though you do not know why. The place feels aware of each step. Signs of life, remnants of fire, bones cleaned and stacked neatly, but no people, only the trace of presence. Warmth gone, but shape remaining. You run your fingers along bark, marked with red pigment. The pattern means nothing to you. It is not meant to. When the men speak, their voices sound wrong here, too loud, too sharp. The forest seems to recoil. You understand suddenly why the people watched in silence. To speak in a place like this feels like intrusion. You, too, feel the pull toward quiet, the urge to vanish into green. Something moves between the trees. You catch it for a moment, a tall, slender shape gone before your eyes adjust. You look around. The others saw it too. No one moves. The forest swallows the moment whole, leaving only stillness. When you return to shore, the captain waits. You tell him there was nothing. He nods. UNSURPRISED. Orders are given. The ship will sail on. The men murmur softly, but obey. None look back toward the forest. It does not feel right to that night. Fog thickens until it presses against your skin. The sea barely moves as if holding its breath. You lie awake, listening, waiting for a branch to crack, for movement to whisper. But there is nothing, only the slow creak of wood. The fog lifts enough to show the coastline fading. Trees recede into distance. Swallowed by morning, you watch until they vanish, completely, until the sea reclaims the horizon. Men speak quietly of what they saw. Some claim to have glimpsed idols carved into rock. Others say they saw only fog. The truth feels irrelevant. What matters is the leaving, that slow retreat from something that did not care whether you came or went. The ship moves on. Sails catch a thin wind. Water ahead is pale blue, smooth as glass. Behind, the world folds in on itself, marked, untouched, already forgetting your presence. As the coast fades, a thought drifts through you. Maybe maps are not for finding places, but for naming the unknown. Maybe the world only becomes real when you draw lines on it. Maybe this place, the edge of all you've known, is better left without names at all. You stand at the railing until fog swallows the last hint of land. The men begin their work in silence. Ropes tighten, sails shift. The ship groans softly as it turns toward open sea. The horizon stretches a headless, pale dot. The air grows lighter, thinner. You breathe deeply, trying to catch the forest's scent still lingering in your lungs. But it is gone, replaced once more by salt, wood, and the faint, unchanging taste of distance. You close your eyes. The world hums around you, the steady rhythm of water, wood, and wind. The forest fades behind you like a dream you were never meant to remember. Ahead, the sea waits, vast, indifferent, quiet, as if daring you to keep believing there is still more to find. The sea narrows, and so does breath. You stand near the bow, your exhale catching in the cold like smoke that refuses to rise around you. The water has changed its voice. It no longer sings in deep, patient rhythms. It mutters low, broken, pressed between cliffs of stone and ice. The ship groans with each gust, as if the wood itself knows. This passage was never meant for men. You once thought the ocean infinite. Now it feels like a throat closing. The strait twists ahead, edges clawing into fog. The world narrows into a corridor of fear, the unknown pressing from both sides. Wind cuts like a blade across skin. Your hands, stiff with salt and cold, no longer feel like yours. Every rope, every knot, every pull is slower now. The deck rims with frost. Barrels you once counted with steady hands are swollen, cracked, leaking brine. The sea drinks what you once thought was yours. The captain does not shiver. His coat snaps in the wind like a flag that will not bow. You watch him from a distance. As always, his silhouette against the pale, endless, white melon seems made for this silence, this cruelty. You wonder if he feels it too, the weight of a place where even sound freezes before reaching another ear. No one speaks much anymore. Words have become like rations spent, carefully measured out. The men's faces have turned gray, eyes hollowed by too many dawns that look exactly the same. You cannot recall when the sun last felt warm. The horizon no longer burns gold, it burns nothing at all, just a dull smear of light offering no promise. You once believed the sea was alive, full of hidden creatures, secret depths, but here it feels dead, a mirror for your own exhaustion. Even the gulls have vanished, only the wind remains relentless, unkind, whispering through rigging like a prayer no one believes in anymore. When the storm comes, it arrives without thunder or rage. It comes quietly, curtain of sleep, turning air to glass. Sails stiffen, ropes crack. You move with the others, numb, half-blind, shouting without hearing your own voice. Each wave is a hand rising to pull the ship backward. The mast bends, but does not break. Not yet. Darkness falls without blackness, only thicker gray. You tie yourself to the railing, as the older sailors do. You've stopped questioning why. The deck tilts, the cold bites, and for a moment, as the ship lurches into the void, you think of home not as a place, but as a warmth your body still remembers. A man slips that night. His name does not matter. You hear the splash, the brief cry swallowed by wind, then nothing. No one moves to the edge. The sea takes its due. Silence returns, heavier than before, by the return of light. Ropes are sheathed in ice clear as glass, blown by unseen hands. You run your palm along it and feel nothing. Your fingers have forgotten the language of touch. Everything has turned to ritual. The scraping of frost, the pulling of lines, the chewing of stale biscuit that splinters in your mouth like bone. You've learned not to think too far ahead. Here, time stretches thin, loses shape. Days fold into one another until they no longer matter. You measure passage by small things, the creak that changes pitch, the breath of wind that feels slightly less cruel, the faint glow that tells you the sun still exists beyond the fog. Sometimes, when the ship drifts slower through the channel, you lie awake below deck. The wood above moans softly like a living creature, dreaming in its sleep. You listen for that sound because it reminds you you're still moving, even if you do not know where. You think of maps, those sheets drawn by hands that never felt this cold. Their lines are clean, confident, untouched by salt or fear. Somewhere on one of those maps, this place does not yet exist. You are part of the ink. That will make it real. The thought brings no pride on, a quiet ache. You wonder if being first to suffer something makes it noble or simply foolish. Melon's voice cuts through the wind. Some nights, certain you do not understand how he still believes in direction, in destiny, in something beyond this endless gray. But belief has become a kind of heat. You borrow what you can, just enough to keep moving. There is talk of turning back, whispers passed in dark, muttered behind barrels, beneath breath. You do not join them, not because you disagree, but because the words themselves feel too heavy. Hope and rebellion sound the same here. Both cost too much. Then comes a moment when the wind stops, just stops. The stillness is worse than any storm. The ship hangs in the water like an insect trapped in glass. The men look at one another as if waiting for the world to start again. You hear everything now, the drip of melted ice, The sigh of a sleeping man, the soft creak of your own boots shifting, it is unbearable. You stare at the horizon, half expecting it to move. It does not. The world is silent. The world is still. You wonder if this is how death begins, not with a scream, but with the quiet refusal of motion. When the wind returns, it feels like forgiveness. Sails swell, ropes tighten. The ship stirs. The men breathe as if waking from a dream, but relief is brief. The cold remains. The hunger deepens. The sky hangs low and colorless. You realize something then. It is not the sea you fear anymore. It is the waiting. The slow erosion of what makes you human have become part of the ship. Another sound in its chorus of creaks and sighs. The thought both comforts and frightens you. Later, the cliffs begin to widen. The wind smells different. The water turns from steel, gray, to something almost blue. You feel it before you see it. The subtle shift, the loosening of the air. The strait is ending. The world impossibly continues. No one cheers. No one dares. The ocean beyond lies wide and bright, a mirror stretching to the edge of imagination. But you know better than to call it freedom. You've learned that every horizon only hides another kind of confinement. As the ship glides toward open water, you look back once. Mountains fade into mist. The narrow path is swallowed by distance. It feels like leaving a grave you built for yourself. The cold lingers in your bones, refusing to thaw. You close your eyes and let the wind find your face. It's softer now, almost kind. The taste of salt on your lips is the same as it has always been, bitter, endless, necessary. Somewhere behind you, the strait sighs. Ahead, the unknown waits not as a promise, but as a question no one aboard dares to answer. You breathe slowly. Ropes creak. Sails fill. The ship moves on, carrying your hunger, your silence, your fading sense of self, into the next stretch of sea, where even the stars will change their names. Again, the strait disappears behind you, swallowed by fog and memory. The wind softens to a faint hum. Waves move with languid patience that makes your arms ache from the weight of doing nothing. The ship floats, a small wooden thought, adrift on a vast sheet of glass, stretching in every direction. There is no horizon to reach, only the blue and broken, unyielding, merciless in its stillness. Days lose their names. Here. You no longer know which light is rising or setting, only that it shifts imperceptibly across the water. The ocean is so calm it has forgotten how to move, and you fear you might forget as well. Each breath is an effort against monotony. Even the waves seem lazy in their endless repetition, like tired ghosts swimming just beneath the surface. The men drift in silence. Some sit on barrels, staring into the water as if it will speak with enough attention. Some pace, the deckhands empty, shoulders rounded beneath coats, stiff with salt and cold. They speak little when they do. Words are soft, uncertain, often half-formed. You listen, counting syllables, trying to remember what conversation once sounded like. Most dissolves in the air before it reaches you. Food has become ritual. You chew slowly, mechanically tasting salt, rot, and fatigue. But little else. The cook moves among barrels, with quiet determination, scraping every bit of old biscuit, measuring water with exacting care. His face is lined with shadows. He does not complain. No one does. You have all learned that complaint only sharpens hunger, makes the cold more cruel. Time bends here. A moment stretches into another. Hours fold into themselves. You feel the ship's movement as part of your own body. Its rocking becomes the rhythm of your pulse, the push of water against hull, the cadence of your thoughts. Sleep is shallow, fragmentary, measured in moments that rise and fall with the tides. Even dreaming has slowed. You remember color only vaguely, the brown of old biscuit, the gray of salted meat, the pale gleam of rope slick with brine. You watch the water. Sometimes you see faces. They're not yours. Not really, but echoes across the mirror surface, pale and indistinct. They frown. They watch. You cannot tell. You lean closer and they vanish. Sometimes it is a man from the crew, flattened by reflection. Sometimes a stranger, someone you might have known in another world. All fade like rumor. The air has its own texture here, not sharp or bracing, not wet with spray or soot, but a slow, dense calm that fills every corner of the deck. It presses against your skin, your lungs, your thoughts. Breathing becomes an act of patience. You notice every small sound, a rope creaking, a nail straining, the faintest sigh of wood settling under weight. They all seem louder, now precious, for their difference from total silence. The captain walks the deck with quiet authority. Magellan seems untouched by monotony. He paces, gaze, distant tracing lines in water that do not exist. You watch him, understanding that belief here has a different meaning, not hope, not trust, but the act of continuing to move, even when the world does not. The men talk sometimes of what lies ahead, whispering of islands, trade winds, lands where food might exist in abundance. You listen, but the words feel hollow, drifting across water without weight, vanishing before they reach you. Like mist over the ocean's mirror, when a bird appears, a small speck, a fleeting shadow in the sky, it brings a surge of sensation you cannot name. Men point, laugh softly, gesture with renewed energy, but it is brief. The bird passes. The ocean resumes its slow, merciless calm. You remember the forests at the edge of the map, the strait with its punishing wind, the ice, the hunger, the faint scent of mud and leaves. And then it is gone. Only the blue remains. Ropes are wet beneath your hands, not with water, but with condensation from endless fog. You run your fingers along them to feel texture, something real. The deck has lost its familiarity. Each plank is a surface to tread lightly upon. You measure the distance between yourself and the rail. You measure the distance between yourself and your own memory. Sleep comes and leaves in pieces. Dreams are shallow, fragmentary. You dream of cliffs, of forests, of mouths filled with fresh food. You awaken to salt, to blue, to the slow, unbroken rhythm of the ship, the same ropes, the same barrels, the same quiet murmur of men grown thinner, quieter, older. Without years passing, you wake and wonder if you are still the person who left Sevalor, if the sea has slowly written over your name. Conversations, when they happen, drift into absurdity. Men make observations about clouds, sky color, wave shape. They joke quietly about things that cannot be true, about the ship, about stars long since shifted into unknown patterns. Laughter is soft, almost reverent more, a sound of recognition that someone is still alive than of mirth. Time has hollowed the crew, hollowed the ship, hollowed you. You move because the body moves, speak because the tongue moves, breathe because lungs are expected to, not because you feel the necessity of it. Even hope has taken on a rhythm, slow, methodical, predictable. You count passage by how the wind shifts, by the faint difference in hue between sky and water, by the pull of salt on your lips. You notice small details with growing intensity, a rope frayed in subtle pattern, a nail loose in the deck, the sheen of frost forming. When air cools, each observation is a lifeline to the world you can still touch. Each sense stretched to its limit, meaning in what is almost nothing. The horizon curves but does not end. You lean over the rail, watching mirror-smooth water, trying to see beyond the reflection. You touch the surface, cold, infinite, unresponsive. Your own face appears gray and familiar and fades instantly. The men beside you are shadows, nearly indistinguishable from the ship itself. Sometimes you imagine land, not real land, but a memory or story from another life. You imagine forests, rivers, people, animals. You see them clearly for a moment, tin vivid color. In movement then, the blue returns, swallowing the vision, leaving only monotone calm. You exhale and wonder if this is what eternity must feel like. Magellan appears at the bow, one evening wind faint, water perfectly still. He points silently to the horizon, then lowers his hand. You follow the gesture, but there is nothing to see. Stillness reigns, yet the crew obeys, adjusting sails, securing ropes, moving as if direction still exists. Even when it does not, you realize the voyage has transformed. It is no longer about reaching a place, discovering a coast, or returning home. It is about endurance, about inhabiting a world that refuses change, about measuring life not in distance traveled, but in breaths taken against infinite stillness. The stars above shift imperceptibly. They are faint, unfamiliar, too high to reach. You chart them in your mind, name them silently, knowing the names are worthless. Still, you name them. You move through the blue void beneath them, one small human among countless miles of unbroken water. Occasionally, the sound of a gull pierces the calm, startling, almost unbearable in its rarity. The crew murmurs softly. The ship creaks in acknowledgement, a single voice in the quiet. Then silence returns, complete, infinite, relentless. You stand at the rail and watch your reflection blur into the water. The world narrows into this small space, where time bends and memory fades. Even yourself begins to feel like a rumor, whispered echo of the person who signed his name on paper in Seville, a body afloat on endless blue, cessed by the necessity of doing something rather than nothing. The ship drifts on, the blue stretches further than eyes can follow. The men are quiet as you are quiet. The wind hums through the rigging in a tone that has become familiar, lullaby, a reminder that the world continues even when the self recedes. You breathe, you move, you survive, and above it all, the unbroken sea waits, endless, impartial, patient, holding everything and everyone in its slow, merciless rhythm. The The blue stretches endlessly and then it ends. A dark line rises from the horizon, blurred at first, then clear until trees appear as a wall of green, heavy with promise. You breathe differently here, as if the air itself has softened, warmed. For a moment, the tension in your shoulders eases. The ocean's monotony breaks with a gentle slap of waves against sand, a rhythm that does not demand constant attention. The men are alert, quieter than usual. There is reverence in their movement, cautious excitement disguised as patience. You lower a rope, watching the shore approach, and notice the smell: rich, wet earth, sweet fruit, smoke from distant fires. It feels almost like home, though you cannot name the memory it recalls. When the small boats reach the sand, the people are there waiting, not hostile, not openly at least. Their eyes are curious, calm. Their voices sound like music made for the sun. You trade trinkets, bits of metal, glass beads for food, bananas heavy with sweetness. Fish still glistening. Water fresh enough to make your stomach ache with remembered longing. The men eat slowly, almost ritualistically, savoring the reprieve. You do too. The forest behind them is dense, green, alive in a way that feels almost aggressive after months at sea. You notice details: the curve of a leaf, the way light filters through the canopy, the faint, constant hum of insects. The people move among it effortlessly, like ghosts that belong to the trees. They show you paths, small shelters, piles of coconuts, nets stretched between palms. Everything here seems measured, carefully yet inexhaustible. You feel something strange: relief. For the first time in long stillness, the world does not press upon you. The sun warms your face, the breeze lifts your hair. You feel the steady, grounded presence of earth beneath your boots. You notice how thin the line is between wonder and forgetfulness, between appreciation and longing for what will vanish. The moment the ship calls again, the men trade quietly. Some offer small gifts, others exchange smiles. All are silent witnesses to the unspoken truth. The sea does not forgive. The food, the warmth, the soft laughter, it is temporary. You sense it in the way the wind shifts, in the subtle glance of a tree bending toward the ocean, in the quiet patience of the water. The ship waits always, even as you eat and breathe. Part of you scans the horizon, the distant swell beyond the bay. You imagine the ropes, the sails, the rigging straining against wind. You imagine the crew still aboard, moving in their slow rhythm. You remember the hunger, the cold. The endless blue land is a thin layer of warmth over the endless weight of the voyage. The people speak to you words foreign but melodic. You learn their names. Slowly they learn yours, or at least something you offer in place of it. You feel gratitude, but it is tangled with suspicion, an instinct born from months at sea. You have learned that kindness can be as fragile as bread in a storm. You measure every gesture, every smiles, if testing whether it will endure when the ship returns. The food nourishes you, but more than that, it reminds you of what was lost to the monotony of open water: strength, color, the simple mechanics of satisfaction. You chew slowly, noticing texture, taste, the way each swallow slides down your throat, grounding you. You remember hunger not as absence, but as contrast. The emptiness you carried before this place feels sharper now, a void you cannot entirely fill. Some of the men wander the shore. They run fingers over sand, over bark, over nets left in the sun. They talk softly, trying to name what they see as. If language can capture the gentle geometry of these islands, you notice how their voices are lighter, how their movements have a rhythm they lost long ago. The ship, suspended behind the bay, is still. It waits, silent, patient, insistent. You stand at the edge of the forest, watching a man offer a bead to a child, and you see something in the gesture, hope, or at least its reflection. For a moment, the voyage feels less like punishment. You let yourself imagine the ship's sails folding in, the sea calming, a life built on abundance instead of endurance. But the fantasy is thin. You know the ship waits, and it will take you again. It always does. The forest is alive with small sounds, a bird's trill, the rustle of leaves, the faint drip of water from canopy to ground. You follow a path inland, briefly tracing it with your eyes and your feet. But you cannot linger. The ship calls you back, and with each step toward the boat, the forest recedes, becomes less solid, less permanent. You carry the memory, but the weight of it is already tinged with loss. The people show you fruit you have never seen, fish prepared with skill and care, water drawn from hidden streams you taste, and, for the first time, sustenance feels like more than survival. But even as you eat, you cannot ignore the ropes, the sails, the faint creak of the ship against the tide. Your body has learned the rhythm of the voyage. You cannot forget it even in moments of abundance. You trade names for smiles, trinkets for food. You listen to laughter that carries without effort. And yet every moment is tempered by memory, the blue, endless sea, the straits' cold fingers, the hunger that never fully leaves. You understand that the kindness here is borrowed from the sun, from the earth, from a world that has nothing to do with you. It is real. Yes, but also temporary. The men return to the ship, reluctantly, hands full, faces heavy with unspoken longing. You follow, feeling the tug of home and duty alike. The forest recedes behind you, green, swallowed by mist and distance. You hear laughter fade. The air returns to salt and wind. The promise of warmth is gone, replaced once more by the rhythm of rope and sail, the pull of the ship across water that does not forgive. You stand on deck, holding fruit and fresh water, watching the island shrink into the horizon. Its kindness lingers faintly in your mouth and throat, a memory that tastes of sun, mud. But the ship waits, always. Ropes creak, sails catch wind. The ocean hums beneath the hull. You breathe the last scent of the island deeply, knowing this reprieve, however sweet, is already behind you. As the sails fill and the bow tilts toward open water, you feel the weight of both the gift and the debt. The island was kind. The voyage is relentless. You step back from the railing, noticing ropes under your hands, the deck beneath your boots, the horizon stretching endless and blue. The forest fades. Laughter is swallowed. Fruit becomes part of your body, its sweetness fleeting. You close your eyes for a moment. You almost hear the island's voices, the murmur of wind through trees, the soft ripple of water on sand. Then it is gone. Only the ship remains, only the sea, only the endless rhythm. You move forward because you must, guided by routine, by ritual, by the pull of a world that refuses pause, and in the quiet, you understand again. The ocean forgives nothing. Every kindness is borrowed, every warmth is temporary, and still you endure, carrying memory like fragile cargo, trading smiles for sustenance, continuing into the blue that stretches without end. Light returns pale and listless over endless water. You notice it because it brushes your face differently, softer but empty, as if the sky itself has realized something has been lost. A message reaches the crew, quietly carried by whispers that trail off before fully landing. Magellan is gone. The words arrive not as shock, but as inevitability. You do not flinch, you do not weep. You feel only the hollow space behind them, a subtle folding inward, as though a hinge has rusted in your chest. It is distant, like hearing a star has died light years away. The light will reach you eventually, but in this moment, it is nothing more than a quiet shift in the world. The ship rocks gently, unmindful of human grief. It does not slow, it does not stop. Wind passes through sails without hesitation. Water laps the hull with usual patience, ignorant, indifferent. Ropes groan faintly. Wood sighs, the vessel moves forward because it knows no other way. The sea does not mourn. It does not pause. Neither does the ship. Men react in small ways, private, muted. One rubs stiffened hands together. Another stares at the horizon, mouth slightly open, as if distance might speak. There are no orders, no ceremony. Life aboard continues in quiet, mechanical steps. You notice how habit and repetition carry more authority than any captain ever could. The maps feel thinner now. Every line seems uncertain. Every marking less meaningful. You trace your finger along a coast, a river, a band. It feels like running along paper that will tear if pressed too hard. The ocean beyond these fragile outlines stretches infinite, indifferent, unbroken. You understand. The map, once a guide, is now a reminder of your smallness, of how little any human hand can contain the world. You move among the men, observing. Some whisper of what comes next. Who will lead? How will the voyage continue? There is no urgency, no panic, only a slow, heavy sense of adaptation. Leadership is a shape, a shadow. It can be assumed, delegated, survived without. The ship carries this truth in its timbers. The men carry it in their bones. You carry it in your breath. Each cycle blurs, as it always has. But now, a subtle emptiness has crept into the routine. The same scraping of ropes, the same counting of barrels, the same careful measurement of water and biscuit. These actions continue they feel lighter in one sense, heavier in another. Lighter because the obligation to follow a voice has vanished. Heavier because survival now falls equally in every hand, every mind, every exhausted body. You see officers confer quietly in corners. Maps spread across barrels, lines traced by careful fingers. They speak softly, words measured, weighed against the horizon. Decisions are made slowly, cautiously, as if each choice might be swallowed by the seer, rejected by fate itself. The men obey without question, though obedience now feels different, a shared acknowledgement of necessity, not loyalty. At night, you lie awake on deck, listening to the ship breathe. Its creaks are deeper, now almost mournful. Wind hums against rigging. The faint slap of waves against hull remains rhythmic, unchanging. The world has not slowed for Melon's absence. Constellations shift above unfamiliar, cold. Some stars vanish behind clouds, others burn faintly indifferent. You stare until your eyes blur, trying to remember the constellations you once knew before the voyage. Before so much was lost, the men speak, memories that surface and vanish as quickly as they appear. You listen more than you speak. There is no one to answer your thoughts. The ship has no mouth. The ocean does not care for conversation. You are left in a quiet, almost unbearably calm that presses in all directions. Heavy and patient, even hunger takes on a new tone, not sharper, not more urgent, only longer, more persistent, curling around you like fog at dawn. You chew stale biscuit and salted meat with mechanical precision that has become almost meditative. You notice every texture, every grain, every residue of salt. Food is sustenance, yes, but also an anchor, a reminder that your body still exists. Even if the captain no longer does, the ship moves, as if led by invisible hands. Sails catch wind without complaint, ropes tighten without ceremony, planks shift underfoot with the same subtle groan as always. Realize the voyage no longer belongs to a man, but to the ocean, the wind, and the ship itself. You belong not as master, not as follower, but as participant in this endless, indifferent rhythm. Sometimes you see him in glimpses, in the creak of the mast, in the firm shadow cast by a sail, in the silent authority of a man adjusting a rope with care. His absence is present. The world has not changed, yet it is profoundly altered. Every decision, every motion, every breath acknowledges what has been lost without acknowledgement. You dream, occasionally brief, fragmented. You see him walking the deck, pointing silently to distant land, or standing at the bow against wind and spray. You walk hand, he is gone. The men move silently, shadows across water, ghosts of patience and routine. The maps remain thin and fragile. The ocean stretches beyond them. You begin to notice the weight of silence in ways you hadn't before. Conversations are lighter, sounds sharper, gestures more deliberate. Even laughter seems unreal, a small rebellion against the quiet that wants to envelop everything. Yet you laugh softly, sometimes involuntarily, at nothing at all, a private acknowledgement that the human heart endures even in absence. The horizon shifts, pale and endless. You lean against the railing, tracing water with your eyes, noting subtle movements, the quiet swell of distant waves, the reflection of stars in faint night's glow. The ship continues, guided by no one in particular, yet moving with the certainty of purpose that is its own. You touch the ropes, cold and rough, and feel the rhythm in them, the small pulse of life carried across fiber and timber. You note the barrels, the masts, the sails, all the small mechanical elements that insist upon continuity, each one a thread connecting the living to the ship to the sea, and the sea to a world that will continue even after the voyage ends, even after all names are forgotten. Sometimes you think of the men who have vanished, swallowed by distance, disease, or the sea's mercilessness. you think of those who remain, faces lined with exhaustion and quiet recognition. You notice how each man moves carefully, slowly, as if his body has learned to measure every action in the long, thin arc of survival, and you, too, measure yourself, each breath, each heartbeat, each blink against sun or fog. You are aware of the thinness of your presence, rumor of a person drifting across endless water. You are aware that the maps feel thinner. Ink cannot contain the distance you have traveled, nor the absence you carry. The ship continues, the ocean continues, the sky continues, life aboard continues, muted, measured, mechanical, and somewhere inside you, quiet and persistent, is the knowledge that you move forward not because of a man's command, but because the voyage itself demands it, because ropes will fray, sails will tear, and still the ship will insist on progress, because the sea remains indifferent, eternal, unchanging. You breathe, you move, you endure, and in the spaces between creek and sigh, wind and water, you carry the memory of a captain. You no longer walks among you, a memory that is both weight and compass, both absence and guide, both sorrow and strange, unspoken comfort. The maps are thinner, the horizon stretches infinite, and the ship moves onward, always onward, across a world that does not pause, across a sea that neither mourns nor celebrates. The ocean begins to feel smaller, not in reality, but in perception. Each wave, each swell, each stretch of horizon has become intimately known and yet unfamiliar, like a corridor walked so many times that its corners have subtly shifted. You recognize shapes that could be islands, coasts, or clouds, and yet they are not what you remember. Familiarity has turned strange. Every glance reminds you that the world continues without memory. You watch light rise over water that should feel welcoming but does not. Its glow is pale as though exhausted by the voyage. It casts long, thin shadows across the deck, exaggerating every rope, every plank, every worn hand that touches them. The warmth is real, but it no longer carries comfort. The sun participates in this slow erasure, circling in its rhythm above a world has circled you in return. The men move quietly, motions smaller, almost cautious. Some pause to study the horizon, tracing shapes and colors with eyes that have long learned the futility of naming anything. You do the same, letting your gaze drift lazily, noting subtle shifts in color, the way clouds gather like smoke from a fire always burning. Never noticed, you realize you no longer look for land. You look for differences, for small signs that the sea itself is not yet claimed everything. The maps are thinner, frayed at the edges. The lines that once marked coasts and currents feel fragile under your fingertips. Run a finger along one, tracing a bay or inlet, and imagine how it must have seemed before the voyage, confident, precise. Now the lines are suggestions, reminders that no map can hold the living world, and no memory can fully preserve self that left long ago. You remember Seville, the harbor, the smell of tar, the voices of people who thought this journey would be glorious. It exists now more as sensation than place. You feel it in the ache of your muscles, the taste of salt in your mouth, the rhythm of the ship beneath your boots. The city is behind you, but in a sense, you can never return. It has been rewritten by water, by distance, by the unceasing monotony of movement. Crew moves like shadow silhouettes against the faint shimmer of water. Some adjust sails, some tie knots, clean decks with the slow precision of ritual. You move with them, one small cog in a vast, indifferent machine. Words are few when spoken. They carry the weight of observation, noting a frayed rope. A leaking barrel. Conversation has been replaced by necessity. Necessity has replaced memory. Food continues as measured rhythm. Biscuit crumbles in your hands. Water tastes faintly metallic. Salted meat is chewed slowly, deliberately. You notice its texture, the residue of months at sea, the faint sense of endurance it carries. Eating has become both survival and meditation, a small assertion of existence in a world that has quietly stripped everything else away. The ocean shifts subtly. Currents once predictable are now mysterious. Wind blows in directions that seem wrong, yet sails respond with inevitability. You notice this and think of the rhythm of control and surrender, of effort and futility. Each action is small, precise, necessary. Each breath is measured against the slow, patient unfolding of days. At night, the stars are unrecognizable. Constellations you thought you knew have moved, or perhaps it is your eyes that have changed. You trace lines in the sky, naming shapes that vanish with the next cloud, the next blink. You remember old constellations, the ones learned before leaving home, but their order is gone. Even the heavens participating, the quiet rewriting of your world. The ship creaks, as always, a living thing that carries memory of storms and calm alike. Touch ropes and planks, feeling the grain of wood, the roughness of fiber. It is reassuring in a muted weight to notice texture, to sense continuity in something tangible. Everything else, people, maps, memories, is thin, fragile, fading into distance and repetition. Sometimes you catch a reflection in the water. Your face appears briefly gray, unrecognizable. You stare, hoping for recognition, then it vanishes. You are a rumor of a person now carried by wind and wave, measured in motion and breath-growth, than memory or story. The mirror of the ocean does not honor the self. It only shows what persists. The men talk in whispers, sometimes of islands glimpsed, currents traced, winds predicted. The conversation is quiet, almost reverent. You listen without comment, aware that speech is another way of marking passage, another small ritual to impose order on a world that refuses it. Silence is heavier, but also familiar. You have learned to move within it, to measure your existence against its slow, unyielding rhythm. You pass places that resemble those left behind, and yet they are altered. Shapes that mimic memories. Rivers bend in patterns that recall home. Forests rise like ghosts of greenery once known, but nothing is truly the same. You realize you have traveled the world and returned, but it is the world that has circled you, not the other way around. Everything you were is faint enough to dissolve in blue, in wind, in salt. The ship presses onward, carrying you toward home, or merely onward. Each cycle folds into the next, with subtle differences. A rope frayed here, a barrel cracked there, a man coughing softly. You notice these details best, they are all that remain. Tangible. Life continues in increments measured by effort and observation rather than expectation. You feel the tug of memory and forgetfulness in equal measure. The harbor in Seville, the strait, the islands, the calm of open sea blend together, smudged by repetition, distance, and the unrelenting rhythm of survival. You are no longer the same person who left, nor fully a creature of this world at sea. You exist somewhere in between, a shadow, a rhythm, a measured breath. Wind picks up, sails respond, ropes creak. The ship leans into motion. The ocean stretches in all directions, vast and indifferent to grief, to hope, to memory, to the echo of footsteps on distant decks. You lean against the railing, watching water, noting how small swells reflect light and shadow, how color fades into color, how all distinctions blur with distance. You move through this world carefully, deliberately noting the rhythm of each plank, each rope, each breath. The crew follows a silent choreography, learning over cycles, adjusting sails, counting provisions, scraping decks. Each man is small against the ocean, yet part of the immense continuity that carries you forward. The horizon bends, but never ends. You trace it with your eyes, imagining it folding back, bending in ways you cannot perceive. You realize that in circling back, you have not returned. You have only been inscribed into the endless loop of water and wind, distance and memory, oblivion and persistence. You are both present and absent, moving because the ship moves, existing because the voyage persists. The maps are worn, the lines faded, the stars are unfamiliar. The sun rises and sets in muted patterns. You recognize none of it fully, yet you know the rhythm, creak, breath, rope, swell, sail, horizon. You exist in the small, measured space between these repetitions, noting, enduring, observing. The world has circled you, patiently erasing, rewriting you as it wills, and still you breathe, you move, you endure, you continue into the blue that stretches endlessly, carrying memory, loss, fatigue, and the quiet persistence of survival, circling back to the beginning, only to find that what has returned us neither wholly familiar nor entirely lost, but something fragile, measured, and real, the self that remains in motion. Solid ground meets your feet, cobblestones replacing deck. The sound is sharper, echoing oddly after months of water-muted step sand, the constant groan of planks. The harbor stretches before you, familiar yet subtly altered. The smells are the same, tar and fish, salt and wood, faint smoke of cooking fires, and yet the air feels heavier, denser. War, perhaps it is just your lungs remembering how to fill themselves. What? The rhythm of rolling waves. Men and women move along the quay faces, open with curiosity, polite, expectant. You hear voices calling names, laughter, the slap of boots on stone. People lean over railings, crane their necks, gesture to the ship's eager for tales, hungry for news of the world beyond. You remember the anticipation you once held for glory, for stories, for the thrill of recounting adventure. Now the thought feels distant, almost quaint, like a photograph faded at the edges. They ask what you saw. You hesitate, aware that words are inadequate. Maps, constellations, islands, straits, ice, sun, wind all of it, folds into the hollow of your chest. You cannot find phrase that capture months of monotony, the slow gnawing of hunger, the quiet erosion of certainty. Instead, you say simply, softly, water. The word floats between you and them, small, distilled, sufficient in its insufficiency. They nod, understand, perhaps they do, perhaps. They only acknowledge the effort of explanation, attempt to compress an endless expansiento, a human-sized sentence. You notice the subtle relief in their eyes, not understanding, not disbelief, just recognition of a journey lived, a story told in the minimal language of survival. You move among them, stepping lightly, noticing how sunlight catches the edges of stone, how water laps the quay, how wind carries scent and sounding ways both familiar and strange. You carry the voyage with weenways, invisible but persistent, the sway of balance, the sensitivity to smell, the faint hum of the ocean in your bones. Every step on land is accompanied by echoes of waves and rope, the creak of mast and plank, the gentle tug of tide against hull. The harbor feels smaller, now its edges defined. Contend yet, the world beyond, it seems vast and distant. You notice every detail, the glint of sunlight on water, the flutter of a gull's wings, the movement of people in patterns you once took for granted. You watch the ropes of the quay, the nets drying in sun, the barrels stacked neatly, and you're aware of the ship still in the background, a silent reminder that even here, the voyage continues. In memory, you move through the crowd, recognizing faces that belong to a world you once knew yet cannot fully inhabit. Conversations pass, you buy talk of markets, families, repairs, politics. You hear them, but the words do not penetrate fully. Your mind remains partially at sea, half in rhythm with waves and wind, half tethered to the solidity of land you are present on, yet not fully. The streets smell of bread and smoke, of animals and earth. You inhale deeply, noticing texture and depth, and for a moment, the body remembers hunger, fullness, sensation beyond survival. You carry the taste of islands, the sweetness of fruit, the metallic temps of long months of salt water, the dry grit of biscuit chewed endlessly, the lingering warmth of tropical suns. All these flavors and sensations exist alongside the sharp, ordinary smells of home, creating a strange layering of memory and perception. You pause to observe a child playing near the quay. Laughter rises and falls, sharp and ephemeral, like a bell struck in fog. You notice the way the small body moves, fluid, and for an instant, you feel recognition of life continuing, of cycles unbroken, of human motion in contrast, tough, deliberate, unyielding rhythm of the ocean. And then the memory of months at sea intrudes the silence, the slow erosion of certainty. You feel both worlds simultaneously, pressing against you, neither fully absorbable. You hear merchants calling prices, the creak of carts, the shuffle of boots. The cadence is different from the ship, precise, yet unpredictable. You notice how the human body adapts, how you shift weight to keep balance on rolling decks, and now relearn the subtle calibration to walk on solid ground. Muscles, memory, ingrained in months of motion, respond to a world that no longer moves beneath you. You feel the tension and release, the shift of foot against stone, the small, unnoticed adjustments that once went unnoticed in the sway of the ship. You approach the quay's edge, looking at water that laps gently against posts and boats. It is calm, finite, familiar in ways that contrast sharply with the infinite expanses you crossed. You reach down, let your fingers touch it, and notice the difference. No rolling waves, no subtle tug at your body, no cold creep beneath skin-nonly water, patient and still a reflection of sky and sun, and yet it carries memory, the taste of months at sea, the constant motion, the relentless cadency. Thought never pauses, never forgives, never forgets. You notice the ships in harbor smaller, grounded, constrained, their sails hang slack, masts straight, ropes loose. They seem almost like toys compared to the living, breathing, heaving vessels that carried you around the globe. You remember the smell of tar, the sound of creaking wood, the taste of salt and wind. You remember the quiet horrors of monotony, the subtle humor that surfaced in shared endurance, the slow erosion of certainty and comfort. All of it is present, layered over this calm, grounded world, weight that neither lifts nor diminishes. People ask questions. What lands did you see? What creatures? What storms? And you answer in minimal phrases, letting your voice float, unburdened by detail, because the details cannot be carried back intact. Water. You say Agonor wind or sky. Words are insufficient. Smile, politely perhaps, recognizing that some experience cannot be fully translated. You walk slowly through the quay, feeling both the solidity and the strange dissonance of land. Each step is careful, measured on unconscious meditation. The horizon stretches. Behind the harbor, still infinite, in a sense, the faint trace of waves beyond small boats. The world seems smaller, yet heavier with memory. Feel the weight of months, the erosion of self, the persistence of motion that has carried you through storms, hunger, and silence. You pause, resting hands on the railing, eyes tracing the water's edge. You imagine the miles you have traveled, the paths you have traced, the oceans crossed and storms endured. Yet you realize none of it feels like completion. You have returned. Nothing has been restored to its original state. The city is unchanged in structure, yet altered in perception. You are altered. Irreversibly, you carry the voyage in the angles of your joints, the rhythm of your breath, the quiet awareness of each heartbeat. If not in sight, it looks back at you, patient, indifferent, eternal. You feel the weight of observation, the subtle insistence of distance, the knowledge that motion does not end because land has been reached. You are part of something larger, beyond names, beyond maps, beyond understanding. The voyage does not end at the quay. It continues in memory, in rhythm, in the quiet, enduring presence of water. Light dips lower, casting long shadows across cobblestones and boats, and you remain standing, breathing. People continue to ask, to watch, to expect stories. You continue to answering minimal phrases, in small truths, in words that reflect only the surface of a vast, endless experience. The harbor is solid, finite, familiar yet foreign. The ships rest, ropes slack, sails furled, and still the water stretches, and still it waits, patient and eternal. You step back, feeling your feet on stone, your hands on railing, your body grounded yet still carrying rhythm and memory. The city hums around you'll live, with people and sound, yet you hear the ocean beneath it, all whispering in waves and wind, in creak and sway, in patient indifference. You are both here and elsewhere, traveler returned but not restored, a witness to the world's continuity and its quiet disregard. And you understand, home is not a place, nor a harbor, nor a set of questions answered. Home is the rhythm you carry, the weight you endure, the quiet motion that does not pause. The harbor nods politely, people smile and wait. You look at the horizon, and it looks back. You are part of its endlessness, patient, enduring, irrevocably changed. And that brings us to the end of tonight's story. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with another forgotten corner of history you'd like explored next. If you'd like early access to more of these quiet descents into forgotten history, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps more people find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers, Andrew S. and Rich Davis. Sleep well.